Well, Julianna, thank you so much for taking a few minutes today. If you could start and just let us know a little bit about yourself, your organization, your role, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. So I've been in revenue cycle for about 15 years. I had a medical billing company in Atlanta, small boutique company. So 5, 6, 7 clients is really all I could manage. But it really propelled me into understanding the entire nuts and bolts of revenue cycle, because you had to pretty much do everything and learn it all. So I did that and then left Atlanta, sold my business and moved to Pensacola, Florida. We have friends there. We were planning to move there. It's very healthcare driven. You're either an attorney or you have something to do with healthcare. So basically landed the position at Woodlands Medical Specialists a month before I even moved. So it just happened to be the time was right. I'd already been in contact with that CEO, which is whom I report to. And there wasn't a position open at the time, but then all of a sudden there was, and she gave me a call. So that role has really been incredible because, well, first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about Woodlands. It's a large multi-specialty practice in Pensacola. So we have our main anchor divisions are oncology and hematology with an infusion suite to do chemo. We have radiation oncology, so we're doing all the radiation, and then we have a really large urology unit. So the urologists are pretty much the only urologists in town. So they have a surgical center, and then they also obviously manage all the prostate cancer patients instead of our oncologists. Those are the 3 main anchors, but in those buildings, we also have a freestanding imaging center. And we also have lab, because you're going to be doing labs for oncology, you're going to be doing labs for urology. Anytime they need a CT or a PET or anything like that, it's all in the same building and ordered by our physicians. We also have primary care. So we have 3 primary care locations, and that was an addition to our service lines in the last 5 to 10 years because we were missing the referrals to the specialists. So we started growing our own primary care. Next month, we are launching a brand new service line for pulmonology, which will be a nice tie-in to all of our other service lines. So I oversee the entire revenue cycle operations. So that is for all of our medical billing group, which entails eligibility, coding, accounts receivable, medical auditors. Then I also oversee our compliance team. That is a lot with quality improvement and MIPS and all the things that we have to do for that organization, as well as just regulations and regulatory, and then credentialing and medical records. So when I first started, I was just over medical billing. Then within about 6 months, we decided that, really I should be over all of that revenue cycle operations and all those groups. That's kind of my background, and that's sort of the practice. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and we have a lot of innovative providers, which not that other places don't, but there's always the idea of the day that I seem to be getting sucked into, if I build this, how do I do this? So a lot of my team is being real strategic with our providers, which we have about 50 or so providers at the moment.
So you've got a great perspective, having owned your own medical billing company, right? And then now working with having such large oversight over with Woodland Medical Specialists. So that gives you really a great diverse perspective. How has that really shaped your approach, the way you look at things relative to the financial stability, which is obviously the biggest challenge right now in healthcare?
Mm-hmm. Well, really it's about managing the team that's down in the trenches and doing the business every single day. Because with my prior experience of owning my own company, I'm not the leader that doesn't understand what they're doing every single day. So my first approach was, well, I'm coming in from the outside. Everybody else at Woodlands has kind of risen through the ranks. I'm this outsider coming into this role. I needed to build a relationship with everybody that I understand what they do, I understand what they're going through, and I can help guide them into coming up with new processes, better way of doing things. Just because we've done it this way for 5 years doesn't mean we should still do it that way. But for me, it's really more about having everybody engaged and everybody interested in the end result, which is bringing in as much revenue as possible from all the directions that it is, not just from the claims, but from the patients and everything else, and making sure that the providers are documenting what they need to document and that everybody's all on the same page. So for me, it was really more about my staff and my team building and everybody knowing that I understand what you have to do to get through it, but I want you to be collaborative and I want you to come to me with suggestions, because when you have that many people that you're managing and that many products and really just service lines that you're reviewing, you've got to have the engagement of your staff and have them also have the buy-in that they are the main core part of how we bring in revenue for the practice.
Yeah. Well, and there's many successes and certainly failures that we learn from. Let's just focus on the success, and it's really remarkable that you're at a 99.6% clean rate. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. What specific processes or strategies enabled you to achieve that? And what would you recommend to your peers as far as next steps to be able to achieve those kind of KPIs? I mean, that's really something.
Well, honestly, I have to give credit to the staff again, because I inherited that. It wasn't like they were low and I bumped them up to that. We have an incredible coding staff, and so a lot of times it's not the coders that are the ones touching it as much. It's the system edits, and so I think it's a combination of both. It's the coding team really making sure that everything that's going out on that claim is going to be a clean pass. We also have, of course, our practice management edits, and then, of course, we utilize our clearinghouse every single day on those reports. Mm-hmm. So we can see the things that fall out that are in that other percentage that are going to be a rejection or going to be a denial, and we work those every single day. But the other thing too is we are consistently coding and getting our claims out from the prior day's service every day. So, there's some that obviously the doctor hasn't signed the note. There's other things like that. But if it's all there and if it's all signed and it's all there in the EMR, then it's going out the next day. Of course, we have things where it might not. But for the majority of all of our claims, every single day for all of our divisions, they're all going out huge batches every single night. And then the next morning so even though it might not be something real strategic, it's very just, I'm checking, I know I've got to do this, I know I've got to do this, and I'm checking it off the box. And we just constantly monitor it. So if there's some fluke, we're going to be able to catch the trend before it's really a bad problem.
Speaking of problems, I mean, there's so many challenges that you're faced with every single day. Revenue cycle has just changed so much, and as we go from fee for service to value-based care, and the expectations and the outcomes, the penalties, all those things. Mm-hmm. What has been the most significant obstacle for you, and how have you overcome them?
Well, because we have primary care, I at least do have some experience with the value-based care and all the hoops that a lot of the providers have to go through from a primary care perspective to make their cost share. We're part of an ACO for our primary care providers. We've always done MIPS, and we still do MIPS, even our specialties, even though because we're a part of the ACO, it's excluded out of it. We don't report MIPS, we report through our ACO. But we've always continued to do those processes with our specialists so that the process is in place. So if it ever goes back to not being part of an ACO, they aren't totally in the dark about what they need to be doing. Their staff is constantly doing the same things over and over to make sure we're meeting those measures. The biggest hurdle was probably the provider education and their buy-in. Yeah, sure, they love the incentive payments on the back end, they love the cost-sharing savings and all that, but there's significant work that has to be done on all parties, starting with the provider, to even meet these measures. So this team does not report to me, but we do have a quality improvement team that is under our primary care's, director of primary care's oversight, because we knew if we didn't have staff to help them, to help our provider and help the education, that we'd constantly just be going in circles. So I'm heavily involved with that team, because if it all is happening along the way and then it doesn't, and then a certain code doesn't get on a claim, they've all done all this work and not getting the credit for it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure lots of people have said it's always usually billing's fault. So I try and get ahead of the curve and make sure that I'm at the table with the clinical side, because I don't want it to always have the finger pointing at billing. And a lot of times when they've asked me to look at something, it's never like one person's fault. It's always like, well, it started here, then it ended up here, and then both sides didn't catch it. So we work towards how do we fix it.
Okay. You talked earlier about innovation and how proud you are to be a part of an organization that really prides themselves in innovation. Innovation is ongoing, right? Mm-hmm. What is most exciting to you with regards to your space and innovation? What gets you excited to wake up every single day, and how do you envision that impacting the organization's financial health?
Mm-hmm. For me, the innovation is that we are constantly growing and adding providers, and that like next month we're going to have pulmonology. So that's a whole nother challenge for me, because I've not done that service line. Yeah. And so for me, I'm always like, okay, well, let's tackle this. What are all the CPT codes? What are all the regulations? Let's have an internal powwow with my coding team lead. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page about what we're going to need to get authorizations for. Let's sit down with the new doctor and see, what her expectations are. So for me, it's the provider growth, and that Woodlands is not afraid of just like, you know what, there's a gap here. Let's go out and look for this type of provider and add it to our portfolio. But for me, it's kind of like, okay, well, that keeps things exciting and not stagnant. And of course,
new sources.
We're already doing, there's already changes within all of our divisions anyway. But I really, because of my background with owning my own company, I love the provider relationship. And I think the provider relationship is critical, because they need to trust that my staff, that I'm doing what I need to be doing, and that my staff understands what they need to be doing, and that everything we do is to optimize revenue across all platforms.
That's awesome. It is exciting. We have two ways to go. We can be afraid of healthcare and all the changes, or we can embrace it. Mm-hmm. You've been sitting in a place of leadership. What would you say are your key 2-3 takeaways that you could pass on to your peers?
I think the way to be successful in being a leader is listening to everybody, not just the people that report to you, but listening to everywhere. Sometimes there's a disconnect between the actual clinic and then the back end, or the providers. So I think that being a leader, and like I would tell people, don't be that person that's like, that's not my role. Learn all the aspects, understand what your peers are also doing, what their pain points are, and be collaborative. So if you are listening to your staff and you're listening to everybody in your organization, you have a much more collaborative effort if there's a problem that you need to solve, or if you're trying to, document processes and procedures. I'm very operational, so I like to look at things as a workflow, not just what billing's workflow is, but where A to Z. You got to know the whole picture to know where there might be areas for improvement. So I would say for somebody that maybe is a rising leader, is keep an open mind, let people have an open door, and just listen to people, and then don't be the only one making the decisions, let other people make decisions.
It seems like the simplest thing to do, doesn't it? When you think of an answer and you can think about all the advice and counsel around the innovations and technologies, but being a people person, right? And listening is sometimes the hardest thing to do as a leader, isn't it? Because you want to control it. You know what you know, but being able to, be able to trust other people with their insights, because again, collectively we make better decisions, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great. Well, thank you, Julianna, so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it today.
Thanks for having me.